I want to start today with a phrase that actually stopped me mid-scroll this morning.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's from the writer Dorothy W. Parker. She says point blank that we are currently living through a pandemic of evil.
Wow. That's a heavy way to start.
Right, and I have to be honest with you, my first reaction was to just roll my eyes. It felt very, I don't know, very dramatic.
Like something out of a sermon or a trailer for a horror movie?
Completely. You think, okay, here comes the fire and brimstone, but then I started digging into the stack of research you brought in for this deep dive.
Right. The sociological breakdown, the psychology, the systemic analysis.
Exactly. And I realized she isn't using the word evil as a religious term at all. She's using it as a diagnosis.
That is the critical distinction we really need to make right out of the gate here.
Yeah.
We aren't here to talk about demons or the supernatural or anything spooky.
No ghosts.
No ghosts. We are looking at evil as a form of measurable human energy.
Measurable human energy.
Okay. Think of it as a social pathology. It's a behavioral contagion that spreads exactly like a virus.
So if we strip away the spooky stuff, we're basically talking about a survival guide for you, the listener.
Essentially, yes. The sources today argue that understanding this pathology is really the only way to navigate a polarized, high-stress world.
Without losing your own humanity in the process.
Precisely. And we're going to look at this through two different lenses today. First, the sociological lens.
Which is how our institutions are actually structured to dehumanize us.
Right. And second, the energetic or philosophical lens. How intent and frequency operate almost on a biological level.
Okay, let's unpack the diagnosis first. If this is a pandemic, what are the symptoms? Because it feels like evil is a very strong word for just bureaucracy or bad politics.
It is strong, but you have to look at the mechanism. In this framework, evil manifests primarily as systemic indifference.
Systemic indifference.
Yes, it's what happens when the social contract completely disintegrates. Ideally, a society runs on a baseline of global empathy.
Right. I look at you, I see a human, I treat you with basic dignity.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But when the structure fragments, that baseline shifts entirely. We revert to tribal survival.
So it's not that everyone woke up on a Tuesday and just decided to be a villain.
No, not at all.
It's that the system forces a mindset of us versus them, and in that survival mode, treating people badly just becomes logical.
It becomes a survival mechanism. You stop seeing people, you see threats, or you see resources.
Wow.
But here is where it gets darker. You have to layer the psychological lens on top of that. The sources discuss the rise of the dark tetrad traits on a macro scale.
Okay, I've heard of the dark triad before. That's narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, right?
That's right.
What's the fourth one?
Sadism.
Sadism.
The actual enjoyment of inflicting pain. And the argument here isn't just that these people exist, it's that our current environment, the digital, high-speed, algorithmically driven world, actually rewards these traits.
That makes a terrifying amount of sense. If you're a CEO who fires 5,000 people just to boost the stock price a few points.
The market calls you a genius.
Right, not a psychopath.
This system actively selects for a lack of empathy. And there is a real biological cost to this for all of us.
Which the sources talk about with mirror neurons, right?
Yes. Our mirror neurons, those are the parts of the brain that allow us to feel someone else's pain. They're literally being overwhelmed.
We overwhelmed how? Like a fuse blowing.
Think about your feed. If you're scrolling on your phone right now, in 5 minutes you might see a cat video, then a war crime, then a recipe, and then a massive political scandal.
Yeah, it's whiplash.
Your brain simply cannot process the empathy required for the tragedy before it's hit with the dopamine of the comedy.
So the mirror neurons just give up.
They stop firing correctly.
Yeah.
And this leads to what the research calls moral disengagement.
Which is a fancy way of saying we just turn our empathy off.
We convince ourselves the rules don't apply to us in certain contexts. We say, well, I'm a good person, but I have to destroy this guy on Twitter because he's on the other team.
Oh, man, that hits close to home. That disconnect, that belief that ethical standards are flexible if it serves our tribe, that's the human energy of malice.
Yes. It's not just apathy. It is an active disengagement from the humanity of others.
And that leads us perfectly into the concept of frequency. Now I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
When I hear the word frequency, my mind immediately goes to crystals and incense. But the sources are absolutely adamant that this isn't New Age jargon.
It's really not. You have to strip the mysticism away entirely. In this sociological context, frequency just refers to the baseline emotional state of a population.
Like the vibe of a room.
Exactly. Think of it as the hum of a room. You know when you walk into a meeting where two people have just been screaming at each other?
Oh, yeah.
Even if they're dead silent when you walk in. You feel the tension, right?
Yeah, the air feels heavy. You just want to leave immediately.
That is a low-frequency state. Fear, shame, anger. These are contractive energies.
Contractive meaning they make you pull inward.
Right. They make you pull inward, defend yourself, and shut down.
Right.
And right now, on a global scale, we are seeing a massive prevalence of these exact states.
And I assume this creates a massive feedback loop. If I'm fearful, I act defensively, which makes you fearful, and so on.
An amplifying loop, yes. When global action is rooted in fear, it generates more fear. The sources describe this as a species-wide dark night of the soul.
A collapse of meaning.
Exactly. And when meaning collapses, destructive output rushes in to fill the void.
That is a terrifying but honestly very helpful framework. But the sources don't just leave it in the abstract. They apply this to a very specific, very ugly case study to show us what this looks like in the real world.
Yes. We have to talk about Epstein Energy.
Right. And this is crucial for you listening. We are moving beyond the specific individual Jeffrey Epstein here.
We are talking about Epstein Energy as a systemic pathology of power.
The text actually refers to the Epstein class, which implies a whole layer of society.
It does. We're looking at a transnational elite that operates with what sociologists call functional immunity.
Functional immunity, meaning the rules just don't apply to them.
It's a favor economy. You trade social capital to bypass the law. But the real infection isn't just the individuals doing the trading. It's the institutional decay.
The banks, the universities, the intelligence
agencies. They provided the infrastructure for exploitation.
That is the structural dehumanization we talked about earlier. But there's a psychological impact to this too, specifically tied to the timeline mentioned in the sources. They mention the massive file releases we saw early in 2026.
The big drop. Over 3 million pages released.
3 million pages.
The psychological impact of that cannot be overstated. The sources call it global gaslighting.
Because for decades, survivors and observers were told their perceptions were completely wrong.
They were called conspiracy theorists. They were marginalized. When those files dropped, it caused a massive ego rupture in the public psyche.
Ego rupture, meaning people realized their intuition was right all along, but it had been suppressed by the very institutions meant to protect them.
Exactly. It validates that feeling of, I knew I wasn't crazy. But at the same time, seeing it all laid out like that, millions of pages of systemic abuse.
It must be incredibly damaging to the collective psyche.
It creates a frequency of despair. This is where the philosophical analysis introduces the vampire archetype.
The vampire archetype, let's dig into that.
It's a parasitic frequency. It is the energy of taking without giving, consuming innocence or vitality to maintain a high-status lifestyle.
And when the public sees the sheer volume of that corruption, it contributes to the pandemic by making evil seem inevitable.
It makes you feel like, well, if they are all doing it, what is the point of being good?
That is the danger zone, that absolute nihilism, and that brings us to the pivot in this deep dive.
The failure of containment.
Right. If the system is infected, if the banks and the legal systems are part of this Epstein class, we can't exactly call the police to fix the police.
Exactly. The text notes a sociological paradox here. You cannot rely on institutions to fix the problem when the quarantine officer...
Being the elites, the media, the legal systems.
Right when those officers are largely asymptomatic carriers of the pathogen. They benefit from the favor economy, so they aren't going to shut it down.
So where do we go? The sources talk about sovereignty bypass.
This is the critical shift for everyone listening. Sovereignty bypass is the mistake of looking for external saviors.
It's thinking we just need a new leader or we need a parallel institution to save us?
The sources argue no, absolutely not. We need to stop externalizing our responsibility. No more parallel institutions to lean on.
So what's the solution?
The democratization of discernment. It is a shift to what they call frequency literacy.
Frequency literacy. I love that term. It's like an immune system for the soul.
That is the perfect analogy. If the pandemic of evil is an energetic virus, frequency literacy is how your immune system recognizes and destroys it.
And the sources break this down into 3 pillars. Let's walk through them for the listener. Pillar 1 is discernment.
Discernment, or the vibration of truth. This means looking past the branding.
Because we are so used to looking at the philanthropy, the charm, the nice suit, the status.
Right. Frequency literacy demands you feel the resonance of the action. Does this interaction feel extractive? Does it feel coercive?
If it does, it's an infection.
Regardless of how nice the packaging is.
It's trusting your gut over the PR press release.
Correct. But it goes deeper than just a gut feeling. It is Analytical emotional intelligence. You are actively asking, is this person feeding on my energy or contributing to it?
Which leads us to pillar 2, education, specifically deconstructing the biological bypass.
This goes back to the mirror neurons and the nervous system we discussed earlier. Our bodies can be hacked.
Hacked how?
We are biologically wired to be seduced by power or to form trauma bonds for survival. Understanding Epstein energy means recognizing when your own body is being seduced by the lure of status or the fear of exclusion.
So it's knowing, okay, my nervous system wants this validation, but my spirit knows it's a trap.
Exactly.
That's deep. It's literally fighting your own biology sometimes. And the third pillar,
Proximity and boundaries. The quarantine of self.
I like that, the quarantine of self.
This is about the power of the word no. In this framework, saying no isn't just a social choice. It is an act of spiritual exorcism.
Spiritual exorcism.
It is refusing to allow low vibration energy a landing spot in your life, period.
So if you don't let it land, it can't replicate.
Exactly. But we have to acknowledge the cost of this transition. The sources talk at length about cultural lag.
Right, the dangerous gap between the revelation of the truth, like those 2026 files dropping, and our actual ability to process it emotionally.
Technology and information move incredibly fast.
Mhm.
Moral processing moves very slow. And that gap is where we see the casualties of this pandemic.
The sources actually identify 3 specific types of people who fail to adapt to this new reality.
Let's go through them.
Yeah, I have the list right here. The first casualty is the cynic.
The cynic suffers a total loss of faith. They see the data, they see the corruption, and they decide that humanity is inherently trash.
So they become a permanent carrier of low vibration nihilism.
They aren't part of the solution, they have just given up.
Then there is the complacent.
The complacent chooses comfort over discernment. They see the rod, but they sacrifice their sovereignty to stay in the infected system.
Because it pays the bills or keeps them safe or it's just easier than fighting.
They are the ones who look away.
And the third one, which I think we see a ton of on social media, is the polarized.
The polarized
Uh-huh.
uses the crisis to fuel tribal hatred. They mimic the exact predatory energy they claim to fight.
Wow.
They might be screaming about evil, but they are doing it with so much aggression and dehumanization that they're effectively spreading the same virus, just with a different flag.
That is such a trap. Fighting fire with fire, but you're just burning everything down.
That is why the sources distinguish between the ready and the resistant.
The resistant are the ones waiting for new leaders.
That's the lag. The ready are the ones examining their own participation. They're asking, how am I hosting this frequency?
So if you want to be in the ready camp, you need a plan. The sources outline an action plan for building energetic firewalls.
Yes, moving from theory to mechanics.
Let's get into the mechanics. How do we actually build these firewalls?
We build them on 3 levels: psychological, sociological, and spiritual.
Let's start with the psychological firewall. The sources call this the refusal of the hook.
Right. Predatory energy always needs a hook. It needs something inside you to grab onto.
Usually that's your shadow, right?
Yeah.
Your need for status, your fear of your desire to be in the inner circle.
Exactly. Building this firewall means identifying those triggers in yourself. When a system offers you a shortcut to power, you have to recognize it as an infection attempt.
And the countermeasure they suggest is developing a high-density ego. Now, usually we think of ego as a bad thing.
In this specific context, high density doesn't mean arrogant. It means cohesive.
A self that doesn't leak.
Right. It means you don't need external validation from low-frequency sources to feel okay. You are solid.
You can't be bought with flattery or threatened with exclusion.
Precisely. You hold your own frequency.
Okay, that is the internal work. What about the sociological firewall? The text calls it selective proximity.
This is the hard one. They call it dynamic disconnection.
Dynamic disconnection.
It is the absolute willingness to walk away from infected social circles, even if it costs you money or professional advantage or coolness points.
This is where you lose friends.
It is. But the alternative is staying in a sick room, hoping you don't get sick. You have to create what the sources call sovereign nodes,
Sovereign nodes, small pockets of high-frequency interaction.
where people hold each other to absolute accountability. You stop trying to fix the massive broken system and you start building small, healthy ones.
Yeah, and finally, the spiritual firewall, frequency anchoring,
This is the law of non-participation.
total withdrawal of energy.
Yes. Total withdrawal of energy and resources
Yeah.
from anything fueled by Epstein energy. If a product, a movement, or a media outlet operates on that predatory frequency, you starve it.
You don't argue with it, you don't quote tweet it, you don't buy it, you just withdraw.
because it distinguishes between power with and power over.
Power over is predatory.
It's the vampire. Power with is generative. It's the immune system working together.
This is really a lot to process. But it feels incredibly empowering because it puts the ball entirely back in our court. We aren't just sitting around waiting for the next file dump or the next election.
That is the entire point of this framework. The pandemic of evil is real, but it requires your participation to survive. It's a parasite. If the host, meaning us, refuses to feed it, the pathogen starves.
We have to wrap this deep dive up soon, but I want to hit on the sovereign rule mentioned right at the end of the text.
It's a harsh truth, but a necessary one. The sovereign rule is simply this: you cannot save someone from a frequency they are choosing to inhabit.
You can provide the map, you can model the firewall, but you cannot force immunity on someone else.
If you try, you usually just end up getting infected yourself.
You have to put on your own oxygen mask first.
Precisely. And here's the final thought to leave you with today. When you protect your sovereignty, when you build these firewalls, you are essentially deplatforming evil within your own life.
Deplatforming evil.
Think about it. If enough people do this, if enough people just unplug their energy from the predatory system, that energy becomes a ghost.
It becomes a frequency with no receivers.
It screams, but nobody hears it. And eventually it just fades away.
That is such a powerful image. A ghost frequency with no receivers.
But here's a thought for you to chew on as we close out. If this predatory energy relies entirely on our attention and our fear to survive, what happens the moment you completely look away? Does the monster just starve in the dark?
It starts with the individual. It starts with the no.
So that is your homework. Check your firewalls this week. Where are you leaking energy? Where are you hooked? It is time to close those ports. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Stay sovereign.
We will see you next time.